Hello and welcome to the round of 16th of Age of Empires 4 Pro League, a $20,000 free Age of Empires 4 tournament. Here we have Veggie, Scyther, and Dinky King with Get On The Deers as their team name versus Double Agent, Pangolin, Neptune, Flash, and Shinku Purpur. We're jumping into game number 1. These games will be from recorded games because in the round of 16th we had multiple overlapping sets and some of them were broadcasted live while some of them are going to be casted from recorded games. Looking at the players right now, Dinky King is going to be playing as the yellow French. His teammate is going to be Scyther playing as the Rus in blue, and to the north it is going to be Veggie playing as the green Mongols. Other side we're going to have Flash playing as the Mongols as well in teal. In the pocket they will have Neptune playing as the Rus in red, and down south we will have Shinku Purpur coming in with the French in purple. Double Agent Pangolin, a team with 3 Chinese players. Neither of these players are necessarily well known from their 1v1 performances, although some of them are fairly high on the 1v1 ladder. In particular, Neptune and Flash have been entering some 1v1 tournaments recently, so we could see them in the near future in 1v1 games as well. But they're mostly playing team games, whereas on the other side, Veggie, Dinky King, and Scyther are all from Australia, coming in with the green Mongols for Veggie, and as mentioned before, it is going to be a pocket Rus for Scyther. So the first thing to look at is that both teams decided to have their Rus player in the pocket, which gives them quite a lot of safety, should cause no problems to go with the fast castle approach into what is most likely horse archers, although we have seen approaches where the Rus pockets go for a cavalry play, so knights is technically an option, although the safer play I do believe is the horse archer approach from the Rus. Up north, we already have a bit of a scuffling going on, with attack notifications going off in the middle of nowhere. Not exactly sure where that came from, but there were quite a lot of attack notifications out there. And you see Flash is coming in with an aggressive approach, going for a stable right next to that Ovu. This is a very nice and convenient town center spot for Flash. It is right next to the Ovu, and it is going to allow him to have the stable right next to the town center as well. So, nice and compact little base over here. He's got a stable up, but I don't see anything coming out of it, so I wonder what's the plan. Finally, we're seeing some scouts popping out. Other side, we have a barracks coming in though for Veggie, so he should be able to repel any kind of aggression over here. This is pretty common when you see Mongols in team games, having one player going for either a scout's opening, trying to go for the kill on the opponent's Ovu, or spearman, potentially even followed by a tower. So usually the Mongol players try to play aggressive here, which of course delays their feudal age, but it gives them a chance to potentially harass one key player of the opponent. Ideally, the Mongols try to harass the pocket player, which is either the French or the Rus, just to slow them down a tiny bit and give their own guy a chance to take over when it comes to a better castle age timing or when it comes to better knight numbers, depending on what civilization is in the pocket. Looking at the first couple of scouts coming in, looks like they're heading down south over here, whereas the spearmen from Veggie are slowly crawling up. Both Mongol players have a very compact base and their Ovu is right next to their town center, so it's going to be very difficult for the opponent to do any damage over there. In fact, you see Veggie is going to start sending his spearmen towards the base of Neptune here. Now, I don't see a forward veil, so these spearmen won't be able to do that much, and there is a tower coming in from Flash. This is his defensive tower. He probably wants to protect that gold mine at this point, or he's afraid that it is going to get towered and he will never have access to gold. On the right side, we do have some more spearmen coming in here for Veggie, so he is going in with quite a lot of aggression. There is the third batch of spearmen on the way, but I feel like if you want to go for this much aggression with your spears, you might as well go for towers. Towers looks like it's going to be denied here from Flash. He's going to have to pull the con to try and get some damage done on those spears, pull a couple more villagers to make that tower happen. But as you see, the spearmen will get some hits on the villagers, and the scouts will be insufficient to push this one away either. So even just having 2 spearmen over here is already causing a lot of trouble for Flash. Two more spearmen now coming in. The tower is going to be completed, and since the spearmen weren't really active throwing torches, it's going to be fairly high in HP as well. So now this is going to discourage the spearmen from pushing this angle. Do note that Flash still doesn't have access to gold though, so that's going to be a little concerning for him. Backup gold mines are accessible, but they are a little far away out here. Down south, we do have a couple of scouts as well for Neptune playing as the Rus. Currently, Scyther with the Rus is sitting at 400 bounty, Neptune is at 275, so Scyther has a quite considerable advantage in that department, as Dinky King comes in with 2 scouts himself. He was playing French, and he added 1 scout in Dark Age. He's trying to get some damage done on Shinku's stone miners. Looks like Shinku wanted to play with 2 town centers at this point. With those scouts, being able to get some nice damage on those Veils, they'll force a tower up here on that stone mine. And what's more important is that now, Dinky King's team knows exactly that Purple is going for a 2 town center approach here. He has been mining stone for some time. Looks like the tower is going to be finished here. Quite a lot of villagers being damaged, but none were lost in the process. Still, this is going to cost quite a lot of idle time, so the value is pretty nice there for Dinky King. Meanwhile, the spearmen out here are still just trying to deny this gold mine as much as possible. The Gur is up for Flash, but you see one scout was killed, and you also see the spearmen camping down these huntables, so I assume the plan is that they want to deny this from Neptune. Now, the good thing for Neptune is that there are so many patches of huntables that he can swoop up some different ones, so it's not the end of the world at this point for him. In general, the Australians are quite active when it comes to aggression. They have been pushing Flash's base here quite nicely, and they have been harassing Shinku as well. So far, Double Agent Pangolin team is a little bit set back over here. You do have Neptune with only 330 bounty, as we discussed before. Scyther's at 475, so he's very close to that 500 mark. That should give him a slightly better castlage timing, although as it seems he's running out of sheep underneath his town center, and that could cause problems, because he now has a dozen of idols, and that is far from ideal. Deer ferrying isn't going on just yet. These 2 scouts are still being pretty active here for Dinky King, and you see they have been denying that stone mine for a long time. So at this point, you only have about 330 stone gathered from it, so that should be enough for a second town center, and indeed, that's what we're seeing here from Shinku Purpur. He does have a school of cavalry and a mill as well, but he hasn't gotten professional scouts, so he's not ferrying in there whatsoever. He's going to have that second town center up, as we do have the first knight charging in from Dinky King. He's trying to get some villager kills over here, and with how damaged those villagers are, there's a legitimate chance for him to pick up 1 or 2 vills, and you see he's been delaying that town center for a long time. Second stable coming in here for Shinku Purpur. The biggest problem with that, I believe, is that making villagers on 2 town centers and simultaneously making cavalry on 2 stables feels like a little too ambitious. I don't think that the food eco is going to be there for Shinku Purpur to make that happen. Up north, you see those red dots ferrying in the air for Neptune. I would expect the same thing for Scyther. Indeed, that is the case for him right now. So the main difference right now between the 2 French players is that one of them is going to play very eco-heavy with 2 town centers, whereas for Dinky King, he wants to go a lot more aggressive. You already see a blacksmith coming in for him. Up north, the spearmen are still out for Veggie. He's up to Feudal Age though, as compared to Flash, who is just about to reach Feudal. Obviously, being unable to access that gold mine is going to slow down his Feudal Age progress quite a bit. He has quite a lot of pastures going for him, which, being right next to the Ovu, definitely will have quite a big impact on his food economy, because when you have those right next to your Ovu, they will train the sheep faster. So Flash's food eco here is going to be quite nice in the long run. Some knights from Dinky King still harassing the base of Shinku Purpur, and the third stable comes in here, if you include the School of Cavalry as well. Once again, I really consider this too ambitious from Shinku Purpur. Like you see, he's got 1 School of Cavalry that's actively working, the other 2 stables are completely idle, so you gotta ask the question, was it worth it to add 2 stables here? I'm not so sure. Castle Age already on the way for Scyther. Neptune also rushing up that Abbey of the Trinity with 14 villagers, and he's going for Horse Archers. Other side, we're likely going to see Horse Archers as well for Scyther, so that's going to be a mirror play in that department. Looks like Veggie is slowly transitioning into an Archer play, Neptune and Scyther reaching Castle Age pretty much at the same time, so we should see Horse Archers hitting the field. At this point, Dinky King has a fairly sizable army of knights going for him, and you see his teammate Scyther is also delivering some carcasses to his teammates, so you see that Dinky King is running low on food, and since Dinky King didn't go for professional scouts himself with the French, he will rely on his teammate Scyther to ferry in some carcasses to him. Usually, the French player goes for professional scouts because your army is very food heavy and you can easily get professional scouts for yourself. Dinky King decided to go for a more army-heavy approach here, and that's going to benefit him quite a bit, I do believe, because he's been raiding the opponent quite a bit. You see, the idle time on purple has been considerable, so he's been raiding those lumberjacks. Now the knights are coming in from the north as well. Many of those yellow knights are quite heavily damaged, but of course, with chivalry already in, you can heal those up. Nice micro from Dinky King to try and pull away that weak yellow knight. Now, purple's knights are going to get pushed back. Purple also pulling away his own knight here in the process. Looks like we're going to have one cavalryman dying from Dinky King, and that's basically the conclusion of the battle over there. Veggie is getting a siege push ready to make a push at the base of Flash. Flash is making archers from double ranges now. He also has a couple of horsemen on the battlefield. Yellow Knights still are tempted to try and push Shinko Purpur. At this point, I think between the two French players, we see just a separate 1v1, and that is being won right now by Dinky King. So he's got 38 villagers as compared to Purple having 36, and Purple has been on 2 town centers. So really, the pressure that's coming in from those knights every once in a while is really paying off. You see, lumberjacks have been raided. This knight has been just massacring villagers on the berries for a long time, and those are slowly piling up because Purple is heavily on the back foot right now. He's just losing his entire economy at this point. He will need some help from his teammates. But of course, the moment Neptune sends his cavalry archers to his teammate down south, Flash is going to be exposed over here. Ardent Spearman getting some nice hits on those horsemen. The foot archers are moving in to try and intercept all of those horse archers, as we do have a conversion attempt coming in here by Neptune. That's going to fail. The monk might even get picked off by the foot archers here, and as things stand, the army seems to be much larger for Dinky King and his team. The archers will trade off evenly over here, but the rams are already knocking down production buildings, and obviously buildings set on fire is also going to help Veggie because he's getting resources for it. Horse archer numbers looking slightly better right now for Scyther. It looks like Flash is going to be able to repel this attack. He's pulling villagers to try and take down the rams. Horsemen will tank some arrow fire over here, but ultimately, villagers will go down. One archer range went down as well, so the value is definitely there for Veggie's team. And if you add it to the fact that Dinky King has been smacking Purple in the face for a long time, then I do believe that Dinky King's team is in a commanding position right now. As things stand, Veggie's trying to snap down that Khan. As he's trying to pull away his forces, you see he jumped into the ram with his 3 remaining archers. As he's regrouping, he's also waiting for Scyther to bring in some more horse archers. Right now you have 1 relic for Neptune in his Abbey, and you already have the second one coming in for Scyther, so Scyther's got a tiny bit of an advantage in that department. But the archer numbers are looking much better for Flash right now. Chivalry just completed for Purple. Behind this one, he has been raided very heavily, so his economy has been set back quite a bit. Most of the fighting now is going on up north, and you see Dinky King is going to realize that Purple has been set back so heavily, so he could just send all his cavalry to the base of Neptune, and Neptune's base is wide open for raiding. His horse archers will have to be called back, but if you call back all those horse archers, you're leaving Flash open for raid. So currently, the biggest problem is that Purple has a minimal army on the battlefield, so when it comes to armies, it's basically a 3 versus 2 at this point, so Yellow can basically force Red to return into his base, and then that allows Green and Blue to push Teal. So Yellow basically is the one that can decide whoever is going to get pushed, because wherever his forces are at, Neptune is going to have to react, and the other 2 players on Dinky King's team will be able to isolate the other flank. Yellow Knights once again charging in, killing another villager out here. As you see, Shinko Purpur is already starting to transition into farms. He hasn't been faring in the year. He isn't really able to access those berries anymore, so he has to add farms quite early, as compared to Dinky King, who is also running out of food underneath his town center, so he's going to have to go for berries. He's also going for some additional farms. Up north, you do have the warrior monk of Scyther taking back relic number 4 now, so he's looking very good on the relic department. He's already making that monastery for the extra relics. As things stand, knight numbers are better for our yellow French player by quite a bit, and considering that his eco has been harassed way less than his opponent's eco was, I would expect him to have a better castlage time as well. Right now, it is a 2v2 here with horse archers and knights on the battlefield, but the numbers are better for Dinky King's team in both departments. As you see, it is only 7 horse archers for Neptune as opposed to 17, and the knight numbers are also much weaker, with only 9 for Shinko Purpur, and you have 18 for Dinky King. They could commit to this fight if they really wanted to, but they just don't want to throw away this game at this point, so they don't want to risk a fight here if they don't need to. Up north, it looks like we have slightly better archer numbers at this point for Flash as opposed to Veggie. Looking at Veggie though, he's up to Castle Age. On the other side, you have Castle Age as well for Flash, so that is dead even in that department. And we should see some more foot archers, potentially Mengadai. We could see some men-at-arms coming in, and it looks like indeed men-at-arms is the name of the game for Veggie. On the other side, it looks like we're seeing Lancers from Flash. This is a common switch that you can see from Mongols. They go for foot archers in Feudal Age, and then they switch into Lancers in Castle. Danger of Lancers, of course, is that the Horse Archers can run away from them very effectively, and if the opposing Mongol player goes for Mangadai, that could also pose a big threat to the Lancers. Obviously, if your opponent's Mongol player goes for Archers in Castle Age as well, then the Lancers will perform quite nicely. It looks like we're going to have some Men-at-Arms supported by some Archers. This is a composition that Lancers are capable of beating at this point. Looking at Castle Ages, you only see Dinky King and Shinku Purpur not being in Castle right now. That is because they are the French players, so they're consuming a ton of food and gold, making those knights. Everyone else has reached Castle Age already. When it comes to the Horse Archers, you have no Boyar's Fortitude in for either of these players just yet. Dinky King is now moving in, and I think that their army is big enough to potentially contest that School of Cavalry or the stable. Looks like Shinku Purpur has a minimal army back at home here. It's about 10 knights, 11 to be precise. Horse Archers are coming in from Neptune to try and help out, but the numbers are way better here. And if they can take this fight before those red Horse Archers come in, it's even better because they can just isolate the forces of Purple. Indeed, here come the Horse Archers, but it looks like those Yellow Knights are just thinking about burning down the stables, which is the right decision, I believe, here. Being able to burn down 2 key production buildings could help quite a bit. The Warrior Monk is going to get picked off before it triggers the Saint's Blessing, and as things stand, you're going to have the red Horse Archers being repelled over here. Knights might actually trade off against each other here. Dinky King having superior numbers. Up north, you also have a clash of units with some men-at-arms hitting the field. You do see what seems to be... What was the unit that killed that Mangonel? I'm a little confused out there. I thought that was a Springald, but I don't see a single Springald out there. Still, the Mangonel died, but that Mangonel could be quite devastating against the future forces of Flash. Most of the fighting is still going on in the base of Purple, though. It's a 2v2 here, but it is a 2v2 in a way that Shinku Purpur is still set back, although with 2 Town Centers, he's slowly recovering his eco, so that's not something that should be underestimated. Nice raid by Dinky King inside the base of Neptune. That's going to kill quite a lot of villagers here. While Neptune didn't have a ton of forces out there, he's doing a similar raid down south now. As things stand, you still have no Boyar's Fortitude for either of those Horse Archer players. Up north, it's a fairly peaceful game. It looks like the 2 Mongols are in a bit of a stalemate, so most of the fighting is going on down south, and finally it looks like Dinky King's team is going to commit to this one, and they're going for that second town center, trying to burn it down. If that goes down, there is going to be 10 villagers that could go down easily. Obviously, they will lose some forces over here to the town center fire, as you see the Horse Archers are getting decimated by 2 town centers worth of firepower. But the town center is going down, and if you take that town center down, it means that Shinku Purpur will no longer be able to build a villager lead over Dinky King. So there are definitely some positives in killing that TC, but you see that they have taken significant losses, so they'll have to retreat, which means all of those villagers will survive, which is definitely a nice little touch. And now you see Shinku Purpur coming in with a dozen of knights. Where did these guys come from? We did not see these guys for a long time, and guess what? Now it is Dinky King being on the back foot. He's on 2 town centers as well, 62 villagers for him. Shinku Purpur is only at 36 though, so despite the fact that these raids are looking pretty decent, ultimately, Purple's economy is way weaker than the one from Dinky King. As things stand, they are the only 2 players in Feudal Age still. Up north, looks like Veggie is setting up a fairly sizable force of Mangonels and Springolds, also crawling up with a tower to expand his Yam speed network, and he's ready to push the base of Flash. Flash is a sizable force over here, but it doesn't have any anti-siege, so having those Mangonels and Springolds come in could be quite worrisome for him. Looks like Dinky King is going to be able to clean up his base at this point, so he retains a pretty decent villager count. He's sitting at 64, whereas for Yellow, he managed to clean up his base as well, but he's down to 1 town centers. It's only 38 villagers at this point, so Purple is quite a bit on the back foot. He's gonna need a lot of time to recover at this point. Now you have Boyar's Fortitude in for both Horse Archer players, but numbers seem to be slightly better for Scyther. Now you have Mangonels from Veggie, slowly grinding down the buildings of Flash. Flash is going to react by pulling back that building. Springolds are now coming out, and it looks like there's a miss micro here by Veggie. First volley is going to destroy 1 Mangonel. The second volley is coming in, and it's going to focus down the Springolds of Veggie. Veggie's thinking about setting in the Spearman, but this is a big win here for Flash, pushing back Veggie. At this point, it really separates into a 2v2 and a 1v1. Down south, we have a 2v2 that's being won by Dinky King's team. Up north, you have a slightly better position right now for Veggie over Flash, but it's a minimal difference, I would say, especially if Flash is able to hold this one nicely. Quite a lot of men-at-arms are now flooding in, but you do have a decent amount of crossbowmen here, so they could just decimate all those men-at-arms. If there were any Mangonels here for Veggie, that would be enough to deal with all of those crossbowmen, but with the Springald sniping down those Mangonels before they could get a single shot out, this was a great fight for Flash. You see, he took some beating on those archers in the end from that Mangonel shot, but ultimately he's cleaning up the forces of Veggie. Still, though, the biggest problem that Double Agent Pangolin faces is that down south, Purple is being overtaken very heavily by Dinky King, and also Neptune is quite a bit behind compared to Scyther. So Scyther currently is sitting at 6 relics, just for reference, and for Neptune it's only 2. So part of the reason why the Blue Roost player is overtaking the Red Roost player is because there is a considerable difference in gold income from the relics. You see, 660 gold per minute for Scyther, and only 260 per minute for Neptune. Most of that comes from that relic discrepancy. Up north, it's still a bit of a stalemate, but down south you already have a massive advantage for Dinky King's team at this point, and now they're thinking about pushing Neptune's base. We already have some knights coming in, roaming inside the base of Neptune. Still, as long as Dinky King is not in Castle Age, there is a glimpse of hope for Double Agent Pangolin to recover, because those knights are fairly fragile when it comes to fighting against those Castle Age horse archers. It looks like Lancers are converging on the base of Neptune as well. They're here to help out against those yellow knights, and now this is looking like a 2v2 once again, but these are two Castle Age armies against the Castle Age and Feudal Age armies, so if you're Scyther and Dinky King, you don't want to take this fight, you want to retreat, because otherwise you will be taken down by what is a superior force over here. You see, those Lancers are absorbing a lot of arrow fire. Scyther is regrouping though, and he's got a fairly sizable force of horse archers here once again. He's ready to trade these off. Neptune realizes that he can't take that fight. He's going to pull his forces back for the time being. Up north, Veggie is getting another push ready against the base of Flash. Meanwhile, Shinku Purpur is moving all the way to the left side to get some safe food eco for himself. In the long run, he's going to be able to recover. And if he can recover here, then this is an even game. But right now, he's at 29 population, having 0 army. So this is going to take at least like 10 minutes game time or so to recover. Alternatively, what could be done is Neptune could go for like a no risk it, no biscuit type of approach and try to raid the base of Dinky King. Because at this point, they are definitely on the back foot. I don't think they have time to wait for Purple to recover. So you could just YOLO send in all your horse archers and try to knock out the opponent's French player. At least damage his economy quite a bit. Of course, it's risky because then it means that your teammate is going to be left alone. But I don't think that you have better options at this point. You already have a fairly sizable push coming in here from Dinky King and Veggie, sniping down all those Springolds, which means that the Mangonels of Veggie could actually take a good fight over here. And now the horse archers are focusing down the crossbows. The crossbows need to be able to target the men-at-arms here to be effective, and that's not something that they were able to do so far. Many of them fell to the horse archers, and the pure horse archer numbers here for Scyther might be able to win this game here, because if those horse archers are just on the battlefield, they can snipe down the crossbows, and if the crossbows are gone, the men-at-arms will be able to rampage the eco of Flash over here. It right now was a 3 versus 2 battle. Yellow Knights have disappeared from the battlefield, though part of the reason why that happened is because they're still Feudal Age Knights, so they don't have the extra defense. Castle Age units will be able to pierce their armor nicely, and it looks like Flash's team is able to launch a counterattack here. This is exactly what you need if you are Double Agent Pangolin, because guess what? Now you could get a push in on Veggie's base, and if you can get some eco damage done, that can compensate for your flank being heavily damaged. I love how Scyther is trickling in some horse archers every once in a while into Shinku Purpur's base, because they just want to make sure that this guy never recovers. And that's the game plan the whole time. Up north, though, you do have a fairly sizable push coming in from the forces of Neptune and Flash. They're getting closer and closer to the base of Veggie, so soon Scyther is going to have to dispatch some forces to fight this one, and indeed, he's converging upon this battlefield with what seems to be around 25 to 30 horse archers with good upgrades, so that's going to be difficult to fight off. We have 3 Mangonels here for Flash, though, so a single volley from those Mangonels could be devastating against the forces of Scyther. Mangonel's already setting up, trying to take down those towers. The towers do have some weapon emplacements on them. It's a Springald, I do believe, but it still will be taken down quite fast. And with the Mongols, you would even get some resources for burning it down, so that's a nice little extra for Flash over there. Sacred Site also being captured by Neptune, but obviously that's not the priority right now. Looks like we do have 40 horse archers, though, from Scyther coming in here. On the other side, you only have 20, so it's 2 to 1 right now. Those Mangonels need to make it happen. Otherwise, this fight is going to be lost by Neptune's team. Here they come, as Dinky King also reaches Castle Age, so now Purple is the only player who is still in Feudal. Dinky King, if he gets to Castle Age and gets a couple of Royal Knights out with Veteran upgrade, that can change the outcome of this battle, because those will be able to absorb a lot more arrow fire as compared to the Feudal Age counterparts. We do have 3 Warrior Monks here as well, so that should be able to trigger the Saint's Blessing. A couple of Horse Archers went down from red. Slowly but surely the Mangonels are crawling up. I think this is the only chance here, right now, for Neptune's team. If this push stalls out, I think they're out, because Purple has been damaged so heavily that, as I said, it's going to take a lot of time for them to recover. But if they're able to push Veggie here and do quite a lot of eco damage to him, then suddenly it becomes basically a 2v2 with one player pretty much knocked out of the game for the next 10 minutes or so. Towers being burned down over here. You have 5 Springald as well to snipe the opponent's Springolds, and that's 4 Mangonels to fight against. Battering Ram also coming in. So this town center isn't going to stay up for a long time. As you see, villagers are already being picked off. Springolds, though, setting up for Veggie, and you gotta be very careful not to lose those Mangonels, because you lose the Mangonels, you will lose your Horse Archers, because you won't have the chance to take down the opponent's Horse Archers here. Springolds will exchange some shots over here. We still have 2 Springolds out here for Veggie, 3 Mangonels still alive for Flash. You do have a conversion attempt by Neptune, little bit of a slow reaction here by Veggie, and you see ultimately the Warrior Monk gets killed, and that's the reason why the conversion stops. Mangonels setting up here, getting some nice volleys out on top of those Horse Archers. Horse Archers coming in from all directions though from Cider, trying to close the distance, and the numbers are just not there, I think, for Flash's team anymore. They have the siege, but the sheer number of Horse Archers from Scyther, and of course the Castle Age Knights now from Dinky King, are just a little too much to handle. Just for reference, we're looking at 57 Horse Archers after this battle. It was probably way more before the battle. You also had about 15 Knights supporting, and a pretty decent army of infantry as well from Veggie, so ultimately their army was way bigger. At this point, Scyther is almost 200 population. If you look at the POV of Dinky King, he's at 131, and Veggie is at 96. Whereas on the other side, I would expect way lower populations. So Neptune is at 95 and he's the Rus player. So at this point, he's at 26 army. Most of that being Horse Archers, but that means that he's heavily outnumbered in terms of Horse Archers. Purple isn't really a factor right now. He's still Feudal Age, he has only a couple of Knights. And while he's doing his best to try and get some raids going, it's likely going to be insufficient for the time being, as the Horse Archers from Scyther are moving up. And I feel like we're going to see the end of this game pretty soon, because this force seems next to unstoppable. This is like 50 plus fully upgraded Horse Archers supported by about 10-15 heavy Knights from Castle Age. And there is just insufficient army over here for Flash and Neptune to stop this. There isn't really a ton of siege here for Scyther, but I would be very surprised if Veggie didn't bring up some siege very soon. Indeed, Mangonels are just now coming out. And at this point, Scyther is more than happy to trade off some Horse Archers to the opponent's Horse Archers. A couple of defensive towers will try to slow this down for Flash, but as you see, his entire economy is now on the run. He's relocating his eco to the north, which, by the way, if it gets found by the opponents, that's gonna be like 50 dead villagers. So at this point, the moment those Horse Archers hit that northern side, it is instantly game over for Flash. Horse Archers will trade shots over here, as we have 2 Mangonels already setting up. Mangonels aren't really targeting the town center, but all of those buildings are slowly being burnt down, and now you see Dinky King arrives with the Knights. Those Castle Age Knights, they do have the Royal Bloodlines upgrade though. That means that Dinky King aged up with the Royal Institute. So right now, those Knights are way better than the Lancers of Flash. So one-on-one, those Yellow Knights will just decimate all the Steel Knights. At this point, that town center is under fire. Minimal forces are out now for Flash. There is no sign of help coming from Purple. In fact, Purple is getting pushed within his own base. He was trying to age up with the Royal Institute, so he was making a recovery. He's, well, at 53 villagers. Not great, not terrible, but he was trying to age up to Castle Age. He made a second town center, but he's still getting graded, so he's just being pushed back into the pit even more. Every time he feels like he's able to recover, there is just a push coming in, and that's going to knock him back like 5 minutes. And Neptune, of course, having only 2 relics as opposed to 6 from Scyther is also a big difference maker. So having 6 relics over here as opposed to what is still 2 is just a massive, massive deficit for Neptune. That's a difference of 400 gold per minute between these 2 Rus players, and obviously that's a massive factor. Something that helps Scyther reinforce those Horse Archer numbers much easier. Shinko Purpur resigns, and with that, Double Agent Pangolin is going to lose game number 1. Get on the Deers. Dinky King, Veggie, and Scyther take game number 1. Quite a long game here, but ultimately, it came down to 2 things. I think the early aggression was very, very good from the Australians. They were able to do quite a lot of damage, in particular to Purple, set his second Town Center back quite a bit. Remember, those 2 scouts have been harassing those villagers on the stone mine for a long time, and that obviously bought a lot of time before that second Town Center went up, and then the Knights just did so much damage, and they never allowed Purple to boom away, and that's something that helped immensely. We'll take a quick look at the statistics here in a matter of seconds. So we should see a much, much better economy at this point for the Blue Roost player. Keep in mind that since we're casting these from recorded games, the colors won't match the ones in game. So that's something that you have to be mindful about. But other than that, let's take a look at the statistics real quickly. If you look at the economies, you will see that Dinky King, 28,000 food, the best in the game here. When it comes to gold count, it actually is 14,000 for Flash. He collected quite a lot of gold being a Mongoose player. But of course, at this point, the biggest thing is that Neptune only had 7,000 with the Roost, which is not necessarily spectacular if you think about that, especially if you compare it to Scyther. Scyther also being the Roost player, that's a 5,000 gold difference. That obviously helps a lot. Also, there's a 4,000 food difference and a 2,000 wood difference. But part of that comes from the fact that you have a lot more relics working for you. So you can just buy some food for yourself, buy some wood for yourself. So part of the reason why that eco discrepancy is there, of course, is because of the extra relics. Ultimately, if you look at the KDs, Scyther 313 kills, 217 death. Dinky King, also very effective with those knights, 149 kills, 82 deaths only. So quite effective all around, and ultimately the effectiveness and of course having the better economy wins the game here for Get on the Deer's team. This brings us to the home map of Double Agent Pangolin, which apparently is going to be Hill and Dale. So we're jumping into Hill and Dale here and looking at the civilizations. It seems to be a mirror setup once again. We are going to have Abbasids, Chinese, and Holy Roman Empire mirrors over here. Chinese, almost a must pick in these 3v3 Hill and Dale situations. Fire Lancers, Clock Tower Bombards, those are things that you can't miss from your army. Having the Holy Roman Empire, of course, with the Regnitz Cathedral, giving you a ton of gold all around. Of course, the fasting period on this map. So a lot of things that go in the favor of these civilizations, part of the reason why they are the most beloved civilizations of this map. With that being said, we're jumping into game number 2 here. On the left side, you're going to have Scyther playing as the Red Abbasids. We will have in the pocket playing in blue, Veggie with the Chinese, and down south, Dinky King playing as the yellow in the Holy Roman Empire. Whereas on the other side, Double Agent Pangolin, you're going to have teal for Flash in Holy Roman Empire. In the pocket, you're going to have the Abbasid player, Neptune in purple. And last but not least, you're going to have Shinko Purpur playing as the Chinese in green. So the only difference between the two teams is that you have Shinko Purpur as the flank, as opposed to having the Chinese in the pocket, like in the case of Veggie's team. Looking at the map, the two teams have quite small hills to work with. Sometimes you see much larger hills available for the players. This also means that this Dale area is much larger, so there's a lot of space over here. You see a lot of wood lines are out, and of course, quite a lot of gold deposits to work with. Looking at the relic spawns, it also seems that Scyther's team has one relic spawning on top of their hill. That's going to make life a little easier. Although on the other side, you see that there are quite a lot of relics close to the hill of Neptune's team. So I think it's still a relatively fair map spawn. Obviously, this relic is very easy to grab for Scyther's team, but if you look at the distribution of the rest of the relics, those probably favor the team of Neptune. So looking at the Abbasid player here, he already has the House of Wisdom going for him. The other Abbasid player, which is Scyther up north, he doesn't have a House of Wisdom just yet. And when it comes to the Chinese players, you already have Hill up for Veggie. Veggie is using an Imperial Officer to supervise and carry attacks gold and come back. Although, since the travel distance is quite big, it takes quite a lot of time to go back, which means that for quite a lot of time, this mill is being unsupervised. So you gotta be careful when you send that officer back, because you don't want to miss that drop-off, because otherwise you won't get your bonus there. Meanwhile, for Dinky King here, he already has all the villagers inspired on the food, and now he's thinking about moving out to the gold miners. Other side, we already have the gold miners inspired by Flash. Food gatherers not being inspired at all by the prelate, instead he's going to focus on the lumberjacks. Up north, if you look at Shinku Purpur, he decided to do the same thing as his Chinese counterpart. He's gonna go for a mill being supervised on the hunt. Sometimes you see the mill being placed on the berries and then the hunt being ferried in. In this case, both players decided to go for the mill on the hunt, and this likely means that they're not going to be ferrying in that much deer. Ferrying in deer is an option for multiple civilizations. You could think about it for potentially the Chinese or even the Holy Roman Empire, because if the HRE bring in the deer, they can gather them close to the Alkin Chapel's influence radius, so that can help a tiny bit. So there are options. We'll see how many teams decide to go for the professional scouts build over here. Looks like Veggie is aging up with the Imperial Academy over here, right next to his town center. This is a beautiful spot for it. You see, it's going to affect the lumber camp, and it's also going to affect the mill. In particular, having the mill in the influence radius of the Imperial Academy helps a lot, because this is probably the place where you gather the most tax income at the beginning of the game. So having that being empowered by the Imperial Academy obviously helps a lot as well. Meanwhile, on the other side, for our green player, we don't have a landmark coming in just yet, so he's going to lay his feudal age a tiny bit. Here comes the Imperial Academy, and this is probably the perfect academy that you can place. This should be able to empower this mill, the mining camp, and probably even the lumber camp as well. So if it actually covers all three of those, that's a spectacular Imperial Academy here for Shinku Purpur. You already have a stone mine coming in for him, so he's going to play 2 town centers. And on the other side, you don't see stone being mined just yet by Veggie, but I feel like it is just going to come in anytime in the near future. On this map, you almost always play at least 2 town center Chinese Song Dynasty Boom, sometimes even 3 town centers. The Abbasid player in purple Neptune, he's also going to play 2 town centers as minimum. And for Scyther, who's playing Abbasids, he's also playing 2 TCs. Down south, Dinky King, of course, with the Holy Roman Empire, is likely going to play 1 town center, and you would expect the same thing to happen for Flash. So, pretty much identical build orders for the 2 teams, and actually, guess what? Flash is going for a mining camp on stone. Now, I'm not exactly sure if he's going to play 2 town centers over here, because it's very possible that he just wants to stonewall their base. So, with only 2 villagers on stone, I would be skeptical to say that this is going to be a 2nd town center build. If he starts adding more vills, then things might get interesting here. But with the Holy Roman Empire, you usually just go for 1 town center fast Imperial with the Palace of Swabia. Stable coming in for Flash, and he already has a mill, so that's going to be a professional scout style build for him. He is going to grab that in a matter of seconds, I do believe. Indeed, he's grabbing the gold he needs for that. By the time the stable finishes and he has a couple of scouts out, he can start researching the professional scouts. Meanwhile, on the other side, for the other HRE player, we also have a stable for scouts. So once again, identical approaches over here. Professional scouts already coming in for Dinky King. For Veggie, he's very heavy on the stone department. He's mining stone with 12, so he feels like he's a little too late to the stone, because he is just scrambling for that stone, and he's about to drop a 2nd town center soon. It looks like he's not going to play with professional scouts, instead dropping a 2nd TC. 2nd town center coming up as well for Scyther. On the other side, you do have some stone walls already coming in for Shinku Purpur, so not even a single layer of palisades, coming in with a 2nd town center for himself, and he is not going for professional scouts at all. Now, he still keeps mining stone, which makes me wonder if we are going to see a 3rd town center coming in even from green. 2nd TC coming in for Neptune in purple. And on the right side, you're going to have, as expected, just 1 town center from Flash. As I said, he's mining stone with only 2. So to me, that seems like he's just going to go for a stone wall. Now, Veggie's keeping his eye out on this opening here, and he knows exactly the enemies haven't walled that off. And one of the things that I kind of dislike many teams doing in this tournament so far on this map is walling quite late. Because oftentimes, by the time you send out a villager to wall, it's too late. Imagine that, let's say, Dinky King sends in 2 or 3 horsemen to guard this choke point. You have no army, so it's going to be very difficult to get those walls up, and from that point on, you could just see an army flooding in. You could have an Abbasid player going for an archer plus spearman push instead of going for multiple town centers. So you got to be very careful leaving these openings in here, because there is always a chance that your opponent goes aggressive and just cripples your economy entirely. On the right side, you're going to have stone walls coming in for Flash. Middle is still wide open, and look at this. This gap is so narrow that for Shinko Per, he can just make one gate over here, and that's basically it. Looking at the team of Scyther, they are not even walling. They know exactly that their opponents aren't really putting up a lot of pressure on them, so might as well leave their base open for the time being. And you see, even just one scout over here is quite annoying to deal with. There's already walls coming in for Neptune, but those will be delayed, and you will have to pull 1 or 2 scouts to deal with this guy. The wall foundations are there though, so at least the enemies can't come in through those walls for the time being, and that's going to give some happiness to Neptune, who is going for now 3rd town center. Awkward spot for this 3rd town center because it is right in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be good for farming, but that's basically it. It might have been better to place it right next to this gold mine and the berries then. A little bit of an awkward spot over there, but it looks like we're going to have 3 town centers for both Shinku Per, Neptune, and of course, for Flash, he's just going to play Fast Castle into Relic Collection with the Ragnates Cathedral, and then Fast Imperial into Palace of Schwabia. In the other pocket, you do have only 2 town centers right now for Veggie, and for Scyther, he's also going for a 3rd and even a 4th town center. He isn't messing around. 4 town centers for the Abbasid player over here. There are a ton of berries to work with, and that could help quite a bit. Or do you still want to place a mill near them, simply because that's the only way that you're getting your bonus on the berries with the Abbasids. So you want to get those up to be 500 food, and in order to do that, you need to build a mill right next to them. Ragnates Cathedral coming in right now for Dinky King, and he's adding 2 more stables. So it's likely that we're going to see a ton of knights coming in from him to contest those relics. Whereas on the other side, Flash decided to go for professional scouts as expected. He's ferrying in there right now, and that's going to give him a very nice food eco. On the other side, you see some deer carcasses for Dinky King, so he's been ferrying in some deer. He only has 4 scouts working as compared to his opponent having like 6, 7, or 8 even. See, there is 7 working right now. There is 1 more over here, and I think I saw 1 more, so it's very possible he's operating with like 9 or 10 scouts even. Ragnates Cathedral will come in at identical times for the 2 HRE players, as in the middle now we have Veggie walling off, and it looks like Veggie is going to place the Barbican of the Sun now, so he's now in Song Dynasty with 2 town centers. On the other side, you don't have the Barbican of the Sun up yet, so this is 3 town center boom from Shinku Per, but it's not going to be Song Dynasty. Now, if you do the math on this one, 3 town center Song Dynasty is pretty much the same, or 2 town center Song Dynasty is pretty much the same as 3 town center non-Song Dynasty, so the villager count should be quite head-to-head between the 2 Chinese players. Looks like Veggie Scout will finally get surrounded by all those Tia Scouts, and Flash is going to utilize them to try and grab some map control. He's also grabbing some towers right next to those sacred sites, so he wants to capture those as well, give some extra gold trickle out there. Meanwhile, on the other side, you should expect some cavalry to come out here for Dinky King. He's bringing in relic number 1 and 2 already, and there's a 3rd one over here as well. Of course, this is quite safe, so you can delay this one, and you just want to go for the sacred sites. In the contested areas, knights are now coming out for Dinky King, and for Flash, he's gonna have to do the exact same thing in order to be able to protect his prelates. Prelates now moving back for Flash into his base. He doesn't have a single relic just yet, whereas his opponent already has 2, so he's a little bit behind compared to Dinky King right now. Dinky King getting some nice hits on that prelate, and now with the knights coming in, that could be a dead prelate. That's going to hurt quite badly for Flash here. Flash trying to isolate that prelate with his own scouts, and now he's bringing in his own knights, so I think this prelate might actually be saved here. Scout goes down, knight is now coming in, gets 1 hit. You want to body block that prelate with all of your scouts, and that's a beautiful execution by Flash, by the way, being able to isolate that prelate and making sure that it isn't getting killed. Relic number 1 is in for him right now, but he's lacking map control, which would give a very nice chance for Dinky King to potentially get relic number 4, 5 even. He already has 3 relics, and there is 1 more over here. There's 1 scout from Flash that's trying to harass a prelate, but that's not going to do much. And now you see some spearmen being dispatched by Scyther to start controlling those relics. And you have one more here, and one more here. It's very possible that all three of those will fall into the hands of Dinky King's team, and that would just be spectacular. Meanwhile, on the other side, you have 2 relics right now for Flash. He needs a minimum of 3 to feel happy, because with the Ragnate's Cathedral, your minimum is that you want to get to that 3 out of 3. If you get any extras, that's very nice, but 3 is the minimum that you want to get to with the Holy Roman Empire. Looks like sacred sites are now being captured by Dinky King, but those will be denied by Neptune for the time being. Palace of Swabia coming in from our Steel Holy Roman Empire player right next to his town center. Interesting spot over here, not exactly sure why that's a good place for it. And on the other side, Palace of Swabia coming in right next to that forest and the stone mine. So both Holy Roman Empire player now in Imperial Age. Flash is still ferrying in quite a lot of deer, and that obviously helps a lot when it comes to sustaining that food economy. Whereas for Scyther, he's got some army on the field, and that's going to give him a chance to grab those berries. Nice little extra food income for him. Meanwhile, some relics are still uncontested over here. You have 2 in the bank for Flash, and for Dinky King, he's got 3 at this point. I don't see him collecting anymore, but he's bringing in another prelate. The knight is going to yoink that prelate, so even though some of the knights will lose a lot of HP here for Flash, that prelate is going to get sniped down. We might even see Flash trying to snipe down that other prelate over there. If you charge him with the knights, you should be able to get it. But as you see, Dinky King is trying to get a conversion out there to limit the movement of that knight. And with the knight turning back, it's going to get poked down by the spearman. Nice use of the conversion there, just limiting the movement to the right side. And that is relic number 4 coming in for Dinky King. And that's relic number 5. So at this point, we're looking at a Holy Roman Empire player that could legitimately have 5, 6, potentially 7 relics for himself. Meanwhile, on the other side, this Holy Roman Empire player, Flash, is just down to 2. So the extra knights that Dinky King invested into in early Castle Age definitely paid off, because they give a lot of map control to them. Same thing for Scyther's Spearmen. Let's do a quick tally on the villager count, as we do have a flood of Spearmen already coming out from Scyther. He just wants to go crazy on the Spearman department, and if you think about it, that's a legitimate approach, especially with the phalanx of the Abbasid dynasty. You can already go for a rampush, but the biggest thing is that having that many spearmen out there will mean that it's going to be difficult for the opposing Chinese player to go for fire lancers, because that's a ton of spearmen. Of course, as I said, with the phalanx upgrade, it's also a little easier to kill cavalry as well for them. And since Abbasid spearmen can brace, they will be able to repel the attacks of fire lancers. So I wanted to do a quick tally on the villager count, and we're still going to do that. So Scyther currently is sitting at 100 villagers, as opposed to the opponent's Abbasid player having 107. Chinko Purpur with Chinese at 102, and the other Chinese player, who's Wedgie, 103. So pretty much identical villager counts. The big difference, I do believe, is that you have a fairly sizable force of spearmen over here for Scyther. This is not a joke. Scyther currently is at 56 spearmen, and he's flooding out infantry like there is no tomorrow. He's got 9 barracks already operational. There is only 2 players in Imperial, the 2 HRE players, as you would expect. And you already see some palisades coming up for Scyther. So the idea is clear. They want to limit the map control of the opponent. This would also give another relic to Dinky King's team. And at this point, Dinky King... Where's the monastery? There's a monastery built. He's probably bringing in relic number 4 and 5 as we speak. Other side, you only have 2 relics for Flash, so it looks like he won't even be able to max out that Ragnate's Cathedral, which is definitely a disappointment for him at this point. Looks like we're going to have infantry coming in for Flash. With the Holy Roman Empire, you have 2 options. You go for late game knights and just build on your powerful economy, or you go for your infantry. Looks like Flash is going to play with the men-at-arms of the HRE. That should be a good answer to all those spearmen. And I also saw some barracks coming in for Shinku purpose, so we're seeing some palace guards hit the field. Nest of Bees also coming out here, getting a volley out. And as things stand, Knights are coming in from Dinky King, trying to get the kills on those Nest of Bees. We also have a pretty decent force of Spearmen out here for Neptune, and you see Dinky King is trying to yoink that relic for himself, and it looks like he's able to, since the opponents were just busy tracing all of those Knights out there. So this Prelate might actually get back home here, which would be just spectacular, yoinking that relic from right next to the opponent's base. Right now, we have a fairly sizable force of Spearmen over here for Scyther. Of course, having the Phalanx available means that you see they can poke from behind their teammates, and that makes it a little easier to take engagements and a little more effective. The Palace Guards are still probably the more effective unit here, though. They're meant to be able to destroy light infantry, and with some men-at-arms on the battlefield as well for Neptune, those spearmen from Scyther will be taken down. At this point, he's sort of trading even against those spearmen, but on the right side, the Palace Guards have been killing his spears for a long time. Looks like he's showing no signs of slowing down, though. He's just sending more and more spearmen into the meat grinder. Ultimately, this is going to be an even trade, because Scyther had better numbers, but there were just enough Palace Guards to compensate for that. You got some knights going as well for Dinky King. Remember that behind this one, the map control is on the side of Scyther's team, and now we're seeing some men-at-arms hit the field to deal with the infantry of Neptune. Right now, it looks like Shinku Purpur is just going for Palace Guards, which is already a bit of a win against the Chinese player, because if you're playing Chinese, you want to go Fire Lancers. I wonder if that's the plan for Veggie. He already has the Imperial Palace going for him, and I would expect him to get some Fire Lancers out pretty soon. Indeed, that is the case. The Fire Lancers are now coming in, and considering that we have minimal amount of Spearmen right now for Neptune's team, that's getting a little dangerous. As things stand, you're going to have the Nest of Bees standing on top of this hilltop, quite a lot of hand cannoneers even hitting the field. You could get the hand cannoneers on top of the walls and give them some extra range, because if you have them on the walls, you see they all receive some extra range, and that would be pretty helpful here. And of course, having them on the walls would also mean that the Fire Lancers couldn't charge on top of them. On the right side, you have Veggie also slowly expanding. Behind this one, Dinky King has sort of been inactive with armies so far, but now he's got 4 relics for himself. He's in Imperial Age, and since he has a lot of stables, it looks like he's gonna play heavy cavalry here. So, while Flash is going to use the Holy Roman Empire with infantry, his opponent Dinky King is going to use that with cavalry. For now, it looks like Double Agent Pangolin is holding this hill with the Palace Guards, with the Spearmen for the time being. Fire Lancers don't have great numbers over here right now for Veggie, and there is quite a lot of Spearmen on the opposing side for Neptune, so I think this is a good fight for Neptune and Shinku Purpur. 2 Rams also pushing up for Scyther, but there is just a limited amount of escort over here, and now you see Flash's forces arriving on the battlefield. Elite Men-at-Arms having that +6 damage against heavy units for the Holy Roman Empire is something that deals quite well with the opponent's Elite Knights as well. So, as weird as it sounds like, these guys are probably the better choice with the Holy Roman Empire compared to the Knights of Dinky King. Of course, these guys are a little more fragile, so the Fire Lancer charge is a lot more devastating against them as compared to the Knights. Veggie is also an Imperial, and now you see the Nest of Bees, and of course the HRE Men-at-Arms are just going to clap all of those Abbasid Men-at-Arms. At this point, the Australians are in full retreat. They were confident in this push. You see, they have been sending out cannon, some cavalry as well. You already have Elite Knights with the biology upgrade for Dinky King, so they were confident that they can push this angle really fast, but ultimately they wasn't able to. Ram is knocking through these walls over here, but the villagers will take it down before the walls go down. On the right side, we don't have that much of a fighting going on. We do have a sacred site under the control of Dinky King, but that's basically it. The sacred site down south is not going to be controlled by anyone, but the one on the left side is controlled by Scyther. So 2 sacred sites right now by the Australians, and of course you also have what seems to be 4 relics right now for the HRE player. I think it could be more, because we have seen some more being picked up, but of course there is so much fighting going on that it's a little difficult to find those relics garrisoned inside. Imperial Age is in for everybody but Scyther though. Fire Lancer still lacking the elite upgrade. Scyther at this point going super heavy on the Men-at-Arms department. But you gotta question that decision, because the Abbasid Men-at-Arms are nice and everything, but they will just die so badly to the HRE Men-at-Arms over here, especially given the fact that these are still Castle Age Men-at-Arms as opposed to Imperial Age Men-at-Arms. Fire Lancers now coming in larger and larger numbers. Still missing elite though, as the infantry of Neptune is slowly pushing up. If you get a good charge in on that infantry group from Flash though, you could just vibe it out. So far we haven't really seen any major cavalry charges by Veggie. Infantry slowly crawling up, and that's a good fight for Neptune. He's getting quite a lot of Knights hits on those Fire Lancers. And as things stand, I think you need to switch into something else if you're Dinky King. Because you see, your opponent is going very heavy on the Spearman department with the Abbasids, so having Fire Lancers and Knights is a little redundant, and both of those will be countered by the Spearman. And that's exactly the plan for Dinky King. He's switching into Men-at-Arms, but he's just very far from there. You see, he's missing the key upgrades for the HRE here, heavy maces and 200 weapons. Elite infantry tactics is likely also missing for him right now, and of course he doesn't even have the production buildings, so he's very far from switching into infantry at this point. Up north you have a couple of springolds in here, as the Fire Lancers are about to jump on the siege weapons. That could be a lot of siege going down here, because the Fire Lancers will just throw a couple of torches and burn them down. Speaking of Fire Lancers, now you see Shinku Purpur also switching into his own. He's got the elites out, so no more Palace Guards for him. Both Chinese players are now fully switched and committed towards the Fire Lancer play. Barracks slowly going down here for Dinky King, and that's going to slow down his advance towards the Men-at-Arms as well. He's still very far from getting a decent amount of Men-at-Arms on the field, and that's going to hurt. Fire Lancer is getting a nice charge in here, as Neptune is going to repel those attacks for the time being. Just look at the amount of Fire Lancers coming out, though. That's the brutal thing here. Having that Spirit Wave affecting those buildings is also something that helps. You see, at this point, 56 food, 14 wood, 14 gold. That's the big power of the Chinese, because the base cost of Fire Lancers is quite big. 80 food, 20 wood, 20 gold. You can't flood them as easily as you can when it's only 56 food or so. So part of the reason why Fire Lancers are so powerful is because with the Spirit Way, you can just flood them like there is no tomorrow. Fire Lancers now moving up as well for Shinku Purpur, as you do have 3 Bombards also crawling up though. The biggest thing right now, I believe, is that Double Agent Pangolin does have momentum. They're able to grind down a lot of production buildings. You see, these were all production buildings from Dinky King or Veggie. So, because of that, at this point, Dinky King's team is in a retreat, and you see, he's trying to get upgrades on these battlefield barracks, but they're being taken down so fast, so he's still going to miss the 200 weapons upgrade because the barracks that he's researching it on is going to get destroyed. Now the Fire Lancers are pushing all the way up there. Fire Lancers join the party from Veggie. You do have a lot of spearmen now out for Flash, although these are currently unable to brace because these are HRE spearmen. Still, unless you get a great charge on them, you're not going to be able to destroy them. Many of them are heavily damaged though, so one good Fire Lancer charge could look spectacular here because many of them could just die. Still, the momentum is just much greater for Flash's team, which is, not gonna lie, exceptional given the fact that at this point, Flash is only operating with 2 relics in that Ragnitz Cathedral as opposed to 5 or 6. Fire Lancer is now charging in here for Shinku Purpur. You also have some infantry now coming in, and Veggie is in full retreat. You see, once again, 200 weapons still missing for Dinky King. He's trying to get his army back on track, but at this point they're losing production buildings faster than they can replenish them, and the Fire Lancer flood is just never ending from Shinku Purpur now. Slowly losing all those bombards as well is Veggie. Barracks will be taken down as well. And once again, Dinky King is just unable to get army on the battlefield because he's losing production building after production building. He really needs to build these all the way at the back here to have any chance of keeping them alive. Castles were burned down by a lot of spearmen over here, and now you see just a never-ending flood of units from Double Agent Pangolin. At this point, all 3 of their members are probably 200 population. We got some Men-at-Arms coming in from Scyther over here, but those will inflict minimal damage. And you see, this momentum is just going to be extremely difficult to stop, because they are grinding down those buildings insanely fast, faster than their opponents can rebuild them. Now you see some Men-at-Arms hit the field here for Scyther, but given how many Fire Lancers Shinku Purpur has, a good Fire Lancer charge on all those Men-at-Arms could just wipe them out so easily. We haven't really seen that many Fire Lancers charging into that formation just yet, but here they come. And this is exactly what you want to see if you are Shinku Purpur. Just dive in and destroy most of those Men-at-Arms. Behind this one, it looks like Veggie's team is able to stabilize here a tiny bit, but they're still losing production buildings quite rapidly. Now the Fire Lancers will get some charges in on the Men-at-Arms. And this is where Scyther is also going to be on a full retreat. You already see 4 production buildings by Shinku Purpur. You also see Dinky King trying to get some barracks out here, but those never materialized, simply because they never had the map control there. Neptune, as they secure some map control, he's dropping a keep. You're also seeing some archers being added, which could perform quite nicely against the spearmen, but that's their only purpose. With the Abbasids, of course, having composite bow, your archers would perform quite nicely. Although I feel like if he just goes for full spearmen, that works nicely, because there is still a massive group of Fire Lancers to deal with, so spearmen will be essential here, because that's a huge force of Fire Lancers. One good charge could wipe out this entire army over here. Bombards now setting up. Infantry flood coming in here for Flash. These are narrow choke points, so the Fire Lancers could do a ton of damage over here, but still, Mangonels are now coming in, and Fire Lancers are quite fragile, so if they get stuck fighting infantry, a volley of mangonel fire can do a ton of damage on them. So you see, these mangonels firing from all the way behind could actually be quite impactful. You see some cannon trying to snipe down those mangonels. Mangonels setting up once again, and this is the type of mangonel shot I was talking about. You get one or two of those on those fire lancers, and those will be surprisingly effective. And that's exactly what you're seeing over there, that Mangonel is doing a ton of work here against those fire lancers, and the infantry flood is just never ending. You see fire lancers, but also Flash is spamming a ton of infantry here, and you see never-ending flood of spearmen as well from the Abbasid player. The momentum is what is carrying Flash's team right now, because they had this momentum for a long time. They're just grinding down the opponent's army, and they just never give them a chance to regroup. Because the thing that Veggie's team would really need right now is 2 minutes of a truce to regroup. Beautiful brace by the spearmen out there. Many of those blue fire lancers weren't able to charge in, and that's the other difference maker. Scyther doesn't really have spearmen on the battlefield that can really brace against those fire lancers. We're mostly seeing men-at-arms from him, and because of that, obviously, the fire lancers of Shinku perform a lot more effectively compared to the ones of Veggie. Now, Veggie's got quite a lot out here now, but you see, Neptune is just flooding in the reinforcements at this point. Up north, there's a big army of Scyther being assembled. The problem that they're facing right now is that they are 3 versus 2 down south, and they are being overrun. Whereas on the other side, this one army isn't really affecting things that much. If this army was all the way down south, it might be able to even things out, but it is just unable to. And now you see a massive force of men-at-arms that are capable of beating pretty much all the infantry from Dinky King's team, and of course some spearmen support as well against the fire lancers. And those spearmen, with the bracing ability, and of course the phalanx, that helps a lot against those fire lancers. And you see, the fire lancer numbers are way better for Veggie as compared to the one from Shinku Purpur, but at this point, those fire lancers, as weird as it sounds like, they have minimal impact on that battle for Veggie. They're just getting pushed back really fast. It looks like we're gonna have some Landsknechte being mixed in, which could be a good decision against that big of an infantry flood, but you're gonna need quite a lot of those. And keep in mind that the men-at-arms will still perform quite nicely against the Landsknechte. There's a keep up now for Dinky King. Up north, you do have fire lancers moving in from Shinku Purpur though. And while you have some spearmen out here for Scyther, the fire lancers will just snap down the keep and then disengage. Look at that flood of infantry. It is just a never-ending flood from both purple and teal. And now they have the map control advantage, so that's not something that should be underestimated either. Especially because one thing we haven't talked about is that while Veggie's team has a ton of gold from the relics, that's pretty much it. Because they are running out of mineable gold as they're getting pushed back into their base. Bows are still holding strong though, as you see Neptune's forces bumping into this one. We get some fire lancers on the wall. It's not something that you see every day. It looks like the game is glitching out a tiny bit. Fire lancers trying to flood out right now. But that's a sizable force of spearmen. You see like at least 50 spearmen out here with phalanx. And of course, having a couple of composite bows behind with the flaming arrows, that's going to help quite a bit dealing with the opponent's spearmen. Also doing quite a lot of damage to the fire lancers. Now you see some heavy cavalry also hitting the field here for Dinky King. But ultimately, Neptune is going to be more than happy fighting fire lancers and heavy cavalry here, because his spearmen with the Abbasids will just counter pretty much all of that. Landsknechte could be a solution here. The problem, once again, is that the numbers advantage are just heavily on the side of Neptune at this point. On the left side, it's a bit of a stalemate, I would say. We do have pretty much a 1v1 in between Scyther and Shinku Purpur. Charge coming in from green here. But once again, the Spearman being able to brace will minimize the amount of damage those Fire Lancers can cause. Down south, still, the Australian team is holding strong, holding top of these walls. On the right side, though, we already have a new establishment being made, and you see Fire Lancers are just getting massacred by castle fires, spearmen, men-at-arms. And as weird as it sounds like, Fire Lancers are very powerful, but as things stand, Flash's team is showing us a way to stop them. Part of that, obviously, is the Abbasid Spearmen, which are just super effective when it comes to stopping Fire Lancers. Obviously, they will still lose significant numbers, but ultimately the idea is that losing a Spearman or losing even 2 Spearmen is way less problematic than losing Fire Lancers. So those Fire Lancers are not particularly expensive, but you still gotta be careful. You can't just charge into 50 Spearmen that are already braced. Up north, there is still not much happening, as we do have Bombards slowly crawling up for Shinku Purpur. But down south, you see even Stonewall's coming in for Flash, so he's trying to limit the map control of the opponent just cut them off from gold. Fire Lancers ready to charge in on this forward establishment over here. Not a ton of forces over there guarding it, but guess what? Part of the reason why there is not a lot of forces guarding that is because Neptune's team has found another way into the base of Wedge's team, and they have blasted their way through these walls. You also got some bombards setting up this side. These are 4 clock tower bombards over here, a couple more bombards out there, and now they're heading towards the production buildings of the Chinese player. Down south, looks like the Fire Lancers are not going to push that establishment. Instead, they're regrouping. That's like 50 plus Fire Lancers, so a charge here could be devastating, but they have to take a fight very soon because now the majority of the map is under the control of Neptune's team. Infantry now charging in as well. You see, Neptune, he's securing map control, and the moment he has some map control, he's making some more forward buildings. I love that. The way that he can reinforce the battlefield is very nice, and it looks like we do have a Wonder. Where is that Wonder up? I think Dinky King's team is realizing that their only chance of winning this game is making a Wonder. Where is that Wonder at? That's the main question. I don't see it anywhere. Like, the most legitimate place to place it will be this corner. But it's right here. I don't think this Wonder is gonna hold. It's so easy to get to that Wonder with the forces of Flash's team. They have 15 minutes to destroy that. And I don't think that Veggie's team can hold out for more than 10 at this pace. If they can take one decisive fight here, which might be a possibility with all those Landsknechte coming in, then maybe there's a glimpse of hope for them. But considering that their base is wide open, I mean, the Fire Lancers of Shinko Purpur could just charge in and snipe that building. So I'm really unsure if that Wonder is going to hold long enough. On the right side, you see Dinking is trying to move out for any kind of gold, but it's just impossible. And it's part of the reason why their situation is so difficult. Their map control is so limited that it's very difficult for them to access any kind of resource at this point. Not just gold, but also food, wood, and gold. Fire Lancers still standing strong over here, of course, as we already have some forward production buildings out here for Neptune. These will be cleaned up for the time being. On the right side, though, you already have villagers burning down siege weapons, buying some time once again for Flash. Villagers here moving all the way up close to the base of Flash. If there are any kind of units, they can clean these up. But at this point, this is the worrisome thing for Dinky King's team. You already have the clock tower bombards crawling up. They're coming in to try and destroy that keep. And Fire Lancers are slowly trickling in. And those Wonders aren't particularly powerful, especially if they're not surrounded by stone walls. It's only 5,000 HP, so you have less HP than a castle. Bombards now up for Veggie. Fire Lancers jumping on them. And that's going to take down one bombard. Those are clock tower bombards, by the way, with 800 HP, still getting destroyed by those Fire Lancers. This is a difficult one, because the push of Neptune's team is slowing out a tiny bit. There is 30 minutes left on the Wonder countdown, so that's the benchmark that you have to look at. We have multiple keeps coming in here from Flash, though. Neptune is also sending in villagers, and Veggie is already resigning. He still has his landmarks. So, not exactly sure what's the reason behind this one. I think he saw the Fire Lancers. He didn't get all his landmarks sniped, but I feel like they just felt that there is no way that they can stop this flood. I mean, there is a keep up in their face, and it's very unlikely that they can stop this push, and it's not like the Wonder was in a particularly safe spot. So, even though his buildings were not taken down, he's going to tap out, and with that, it is an even score in between Get on the Deers and Double Agent Pangolin. We're going to take a look at the statistics for a brief moment. So, the thing I'm really curious about is the resources gathered. Because this is something we haven't talked about. 53,000 food for Shinku Purpur, 64,000 for Neptune. That's quite a ton of food over here for him. Looking at the gold count, though, Dinky King at 48,000, by far the best in the game. And this is why I was so surprised how rapidly they got pushed back. Because if you think about it, Dinky King had just infinite gold coming from those relics. 3 in this Regnitz Cathedral, and he had like 2 or 3 more relics in a monastery. Looking at the KDs, though, 669 kills, 415 losses for Shinku Purpur with the Fire Lancers. On the other side, for Veggie, it was 430 versus 583, so he wasn't really able to use the Fire Lancers to great effect. And you see, ultimately, the big thing, I think, was Neptune's forces. Don't look at the colors once again, because those are not the same as the player colors when you have the recorded games. But ultimately, as you see, Neptune, 587 kills, 493 losses, and he was doing that with basically just spearmen. So you see, this is probably the biggest reason of their victory. Neptune was quite effective, and he was able to repel the charges of those Fire Lancers on multiple occasions. And obviously, that turned out to be quite cost-effective in the long run. This brings us to game number 3, which is going to be on the home map of Get on the Deers. Veggie, Dinky King, and Scyther. We're jumping into game number 3. The winner gets into the top 8 of AoE4 Pro League. So far, this set has definitely delivered. You see the two teams are fairly even on the skill level. I think there was a little bit more confidence in the early gameplay, but the late game situations seem to be handled a little bit better by the team of Neptune. So, depending on how much early aggression we're seeing in this game, that could determine who's going to be our winner in this set. We're jumping into game number 3 as we speak. Welcome to the home map of Scyther's team. It is going to be Highview, and we will have Dinky King, Wedgie, and Scyther on the left side of the map. Up north, you have a French flank for Dinky King in red. Down south, you're going to have Veggie playing as the yellow Mongols. And in the pocket, you're going to have Scyther playing as the Rus in blue. So the same civilization lineup as they used in game number 1. As a reminder, during the tournament, you can not use civilizations that you used in the directly preceding game. So in game number 2, they can't use the civilizations that they used in game number 1. But in game number 3, they will have the chance to use the civilizations that they used in game number 1 once again. On the other side, you're going to have Mongols for Flash in teal up north. The other flank is going to be French for Neptune in purple. And in the pocket, you're going to have Shinku Purper playing as the green Rus. So it is going to be the same lineup as we have seen in game number 1. It is also the same location of the players. So Rus pockets and French and Mongol flanks out here. So this is going to come down to execution because the civilizations and the positions are completely identical. Scyther currently is only at 10 bounty, which is not necessarily a spectacular start. Whereas for Shinku Purper, he's at 45 bounty as we speak. So neither of these players had a super fast start. But on this map where you have quite a lot of wolves to take down, you should really get to that 500 bounty if you can with the Rus. You should at least get to like 300, 400, but 500 should be your target. You have the same amount of huntables as on other maps, but of course having the extra wolves help a lot here. Scyther taking down the hunt right now in the middle of the map, whereas for Neptune, he's going for the one on the right side. As things stand, it's 105 as opposed to Scyther's 105 as well. Head-to-head are the two players now. Looking at the flanks, it looks like we have 2 spearmen floating forward here for Veggie. Now they finally find a way to make steps. Double spearman opening by Veggie. I think he did the exact same thing in game number 1. Whereas on the other side, he's up against Neptune, a French player. This is a difference. In game number 1, you had the 2 French players on the same side and the 2 Mongol players on the same side. This time around, you're going to have French versus Mongols on the 2 flanks. And what this means is that Veggie is going to have a chance to push the gold mine with the spearmen. And that's something that Neptune has to be careful about. Up north, you have a stable up for Flash, so same opening as we have seen in game number 1, he's going to open scouts. And just like in the case of Veggie down south, he's also going to be able to push the opponent's gold mine with a couple of scouts. Full of cavalry coming in right now for Dinky King, and for Flash, we haven't seen a single scout coming in just yet. Scyther aging up the feudal age with 230 bounty right now. And for Shinku Purper, it's only 180, so he's a little bit behind when it comes to gathering bounty. But of course, grabbing a couple of wolves could help quite a bit. And you see, at this point, there is a wolf trailing the scout of Veggie. Obviously, if the Rus player could take that down, that would be 25 gold, but that's not going to be an option. And Veggie is coming in with a tower rush. Spearmen are already coming out, and if there is something that can set the French back really heavily, that's going to be a tower rush from the Mongol player, because losing access to that gold mine would be disastrous, especially if you look at the fact that this is the only backup gold mine that purple Neptune has, so it's going to be very difficult for him to access gold, and it looks like he's rushing up a tower. That's probably the best thing he can do at this point, rush up a tower as fast as you can, but of course, the Spearmen will be able to get some nice hits on those vills. Ultimately, I think both towers will go up. but that should give a chance for Neptune to repel this attack for the time being. This tower really needs to go up for Neptune. He's pulling away the weak villagers, and it looks like he's going to be able to finish the tower. Loses one villager in the process, though. He might be able to trade it off to a spearman. Spearman trying to jump into the tower, but will ultimately just run away. One of them actually dies, so it was a villager traded to a spearman for the time being. But Veggie is not giving up. He's getting a second tower up out here, so it's going to be difficult for Neptune to get knights out. Meanwhile, we do have quite a lot of scouts for Flash. He wasn't really aggressive with them, so I would expect professional scouts from him. He's opening with Wheelbarrow, though, but with that many scouts, it's very possible we're seeing professional scouts once he hits Feudal Age. For now, he stays in Dark Age, and he's coming forward with the scouts. Spearman now trying to push the gold mine of Neptune over here. For Neptune, he currently has no gold income, so it's going to be very difficult to get those knights on the battlefield. He won't even be able to afford professional scouts. He's being set back quite heavily at this point. They will need to do some damage here to Veggie in order to compensate for that. Obviously, Veggie is going to stay in Dark Age for a long time because of this aggression, though. And you could see the Teal scouts of Flash trying to get that Ovu burned down because it's quite exposed and you don't see any spearmen nearby. With that many scouts, you could burn it down before the opponent can make enough spearmen to fight that. Tower still under attack by Veggie. As you see, Neptune is pulling villagers to try and repair. With 5 villagers garrisoned inside, you should have enough firepower to take down some of those spearmen, and that's exactly what you're seeing. One spearman goes down. Still some more are coming in, though, as the scouts, ultimately from Flash, will go for the kills on the hunt. So he is planning to go professional scouts, I assume. But he's still in Dark Age, so that's going to take quite a lot of time for him to materialize. For now, he just took down that patch of Huntables, which obviously cuts off some gold from the Roost players. Speaking of whom, 255 bounty right now for Shinku Purpur. Scyther is at 335, so quite a bit of a head start now for our blue Roost player out here. For now, Scyther is already taking in the hunt, so guess what? Killing all those Huntables for Flash didn't really do that much. The scouts are now gone. Where are those scouts at? Here are the scouts. They're coming in to try and burn down that mining camp. But honestly, they're a little too late to the party because you see, Dinking is already in Feudal Age. So a single knight can discourage this aggression. If this aggression came in a little bit faster, then it would have been a lot more problematic for Dinky King because he wouldn't have had a single knight to repel this. Now he's got a knight, so those scouts will have to disengage. Down south, you do have a defensive tower up for Neptune, so Neptune is now able to get some gold mining for himself, and he's getting a nice charge on that villager, even getting the kill, so he kills one of the forward veils. I think there's a second one somewhere nearby. This gold mine is being denied right now, but the other one is accessible for Neptune, so he doesn't have to sweat about this one that much. Some of the carcasses from Scyther are being brought back to Dinky King, so once again we're seeing a similar approach as we saw in game number 1. You have the Roost player ferrying in some deer for the French player, and that gives a chance for the French player to go for a full Knights build over here. Scouts are now once again coming back, trying to burn down that mining camp, get the bounty for Flash. He and Veggie are the 2 players in Dark Age still. The rest of them are still in Feudal Age. You have a blacksmith coming in here for Neptune, and I would expect the blacksmith to come up for the other French player. Indeed, Dinky King is grabbing that blacksmith as well. Scyther clicking up the Castle Age right now, whereas for Shinku Purpur, he's going for a different approach here, not something to see every day from the Rus, a double Town Center boom. Now, there is a trade-off here with the double TC play, and that is a later Castle Age time. And that's risky, because if you delay your Castle Age time, that basically gives your opponent a chance to grab a dozen of relics. Now, will you be able to compensate for that with 2 Town Centers worth of boom? I don't think so. It depends on how many relics your opponent is able to grab, but you really need to make sure that your opponent has no more than 3 relics, otherwise you're in trouble. As things stand, looking at Shinku Purpur's resources, he's not far away from Castle Age though, so one thing that I have to give him credit for is that despite the fact that he's playing a 2TC build here, his Castle Age timing isn't gonna be that bad compared to his opponent's. Castle Age time is a little low on gold, gonna have to mine a tiny bit to go up, and now he's going to rush up that Abbey of the Trinity. Looks like the scout is gonna get away, and wait a minute, he's going up with the High Trade House. Okay, so we have seen this build from some other teams before, and the idea here, as we have a sneaky tower coming from Veggie, something that Neptune might not be able to see. Neptune actually sees that, but he's not too worried about that one right now, or he doesn't feel like he can do anything against it. So When you go for the Hydrate House, the idea is that you will just collect the relics with the warrior monks made from monastery. The problem is that the warrior monks on a monastery cost a lot more than on the Abbey of the Trinity, so it's a little more difficult to afford them. And of course, you need to build a separate monastery for this one. So usually you do this when you have a massive castle age advantage over the opponent's Roost player, or if the opponent doesn't even have a Roost player, because in that case, you're not racing for relics. In a race for the relics, the Hydrate House build is way slower than the Abbey of the Trinity build. Now, one advantage, though, is that if you're able to deny relics from the opponent and you don't fall behind that much in relic numbers, then the Hydrate House is gonna pay off as you have some knights from Dinky King coming in here, getting some very nice hits on those villagers. Castle Age had to be rushed here for Shingo Purpur, so he had to get that up. He couldn't afford to get that delayed, but that's going to cost him quite a lot of precious villagers here. That is at least 4 or 5 dead bodies that I'm seeing on the battlefield now, so those red knights are doing work right now. Meanwhile, as you see, Neptune is relocating his entire gold mining operation to this corner over here, because now this gold mine is also being denied, so he's running for his life right now, and that could be a very exposed gold mining operation in the future, especially if Dinky King is going to find that with his scout and knights. As things stand, you do have Wedgie also in Feudal Age, Shingo Purpur and Scyther already in Castle, Scyther grabbing relic number 1, and now you would expect a monastery from Shingo Purpur at some point. Now, once he's able to grab some relics, this Hydrate House is gonna pay off. It's still 153 gold per minute forever, and of course, it's also a ton of deer that you're getting forever, so you're guaranteed to get to 500 bounty. You're going to have a ton of extra food to work with, so the Hydrate House isn't a bad building, but I think it only works if you're able to get to Castle Age a little faster than your opponent, because in that case, you can pick up the relics before he can. In this scenario, I think by doing the build with the Hydrate House, and especially 2 town centers, you're forfeiting too many relics for Scyther. So I would expect Scyther to be at like 5-6 relics, and that's not something that the Hydrate House can compensate for. Looks like Neptune is the one being double-teamed right now by the Knights of Dinky King, already being killed by Chivalry, and of course by the Horse Archers of Scyther. Up north, we haven't seen that many aggression coming up, as you do see Castle Age already coming in from Flash. He still has quite a lot of scouts on the battlefield, but I think he's been only ferrying in deer, if I'm not mistaken. He has dozens of scouts out there. Now the knights are coming in from Neptune, and this is his first counterattack, doing a ton of damage to all those villagers. Scyther has nowhere to go, the town center is full, so it might have been better to just stick around near the wood line and jump into that tower. That's gonna be a lot of dead villagers. Ultimately, Neptune is going to lose those knights, but he knows exactly that he's on the back foot, so for him, trading 4 knights to what could be 5, 6, 7, potentially more villagers is completely acceptable. So he has been doing quite a bit of work over here. Would have been better if those knights were targeting whales as well over the horse archers, but damage has been done over there, and that's pretty nice. Scyther trying to get a conversion on those scouts that were trying to isolate his warrior monk, and now the scouts are coming back. That many scouts can surround the warrior monk, and that's exactly what you're seeing over here. This many scouts are enough to kill a warrior monk, and Flash was able to intercept one, but on the right side, disaster strikes Neptune's eco. This is what I was referring to. This is way too exposed here, even with 2 towers. Now that you have some knights coming around, this can help a tiny bit, but it is still a very difficult position to hold. The con from Veggie might actually go down, so you gotta be careful with that one. A lot of attack notifications going off everywhere in the base of Neptune. Currently he's quite a bit on the back foot, but he managed to do some damage to Scyther, and being able to do damage to the opponent's Roost player is quite valuable. Currently 2 relics for Scyther, and for Shingo Purpur, it looks like he doesn't care about the relics at this point, which I think is a severe mistake. Knights are now coming in from Dinky King, trying to get some more raids going on Neptune's eco. Neptune is currently at 45 wills. For reference, we can take a look at Scyther. He's at 36, so ultimately he lost quite a lot of wills to the opponent over here. But of course, the relics will be able to compensate for some of that. Looking at age ups, Flash is already in Castle Age. Neptune and Dinky King, the 2 French players, are the only ones not in Castle yet. And it looks like we're going to have a sizable force of men-at-arms and archers being assembled. This is a weird composition, because one thing that men-at-arms and archers don't counter is going to be knights. So the only thing that Dinky King is making right now is actually a decent answer to all those men-at-arms and archers. Finally, the Knights of Neptune will start burning down those towers. Kind of like that move, because you want to get that safe gold mine back for yourself. Horse archers from Scyther are heading all the way to the corner. I think the target is clear. You want to kill these villagers out here. Now, they can all jump in the towers now, so you won't find that many kills. And instead, Scyther is going to retarget his horse archers, and he's going for the lumberjacks of Shinku Purpur. You see, he's even killing the hunt of his opponent, and that's going to give him gold, because he's the Rus player out there as well. So, that's a nice little touch at the end of the day. Very passive gameplay, by the way, from Flash. He's been building up an army, but he hasn't really been using that so far. He's still ferrying in deer, though, so he's leveraging that map control nicely. Veggie hasn't been active on the map either. He's just now starting to add a couple of Lancers to the battle. Those are slowly crawling up. He's got a fairly sizable force of Spearmen, though, and that should be able to do quite a lot against the opponent's Knights over here, especially if you team that up with all those Horse Archers. Scyther currently at 3 relics, though. This is what I was referring to. You already have a Monastery as well with the 4th. I don't think that Shinku Purpur's eco is going to be able to compensate for this one. It's a nice eco. The Hydrate House is worth 1.5 relics by itself, but it's not going to compensate for 4 relics. And what it's also not going to compensate for is a ton of villagers dead from Neptune. Very nice raid with the Horse Archers out there. Neptune is the punching bag right now, and as things stand in both games that were open maps, Dinky King's team tried to prioritize the French player and try to just double, triple team that player. So they're really afraid of the heavy cavalry right now. And I think that's completely understandable. A completely untouched French player could just do so much chaos. And you see, at this point, Neptune is being double teamed, sometimes even triple teamed here with some red knights roaming around. It's a bit of a miss micro there by Scyther, though, running into all of those knights. And ultimately, he's going to lose dozens of horse archers over there. He maybe wasn't expecting those knights to be there or something like that, but that was a very, very difficult fight for him to take, and a terrible, terrible scenario. Meanwhile, you also have some scouts here from Flash coming in, trying to get some damage done on that hunting cabin, burn it down, but of course, with the horse archers now coming in from Flash, this should be able to be pushed back. Meanwhile, you're going to have the forces of Flash slowly crawling up, though, and that's a sizable force of units now. We're talking about probably 25, 30-ish infantry units and some archers as well. Of course, against the Knights, you will need something that's armor-piercing or just some spearmen, and it's actually a pretty good fight over here for Flash. He's able to intercept some of those Knights. With the Spear Arrow of the Khan, he's also able to catch up, and that is 3 Knights dead, some more heavily damaged. That was a big win out there. But Dinky King also up to Castle Age, so now he's gonna have the Veteran Knight upgrade, and with that, his army is mostly capable of fighting this one. There's only a handful of spearmen in here. If there were some crossbows in there, this would be a lot more scary, but right now, it's not something that really is threatening a massive group of Royal Knights from the French. In the middle, we do have a clash between a Warrior Monk and a couple of Horse Archers. Now you have a bigger force of Horse Archers coming in here from Scyther. Scyther without the HP upgrade, also no HP upgrade for Shinku Purpur, but there are quite a lot of Lancers coming in as well from Veggie, and it's a 2v1 right now on Shinku Purpur's forces. And of course, at this point, having a Rus player in the pocket for Dinky King's team that has 5 relics is obviously something that gives a massive advantage over Shinku Purpur. You see, Shinku's got a pretty decent food economy though, and of course food and wood is what you're looking at the beginning with the Rus, but ultimately, of course, having those 6 relics working for you forever is something that's going to pay off. Now, you see Flash is slowly burning down buildings over here, of course, that's going to give him tons of resources as well, and now his teammates will have to converge on this location, because at this point, Dinky King doesn't really have the numbers to hold this off. He's got the unit type to hold this off, but not the unit quality. As things stand, it looks like the Ram is gonna get caught off guard here a tiny bit. Flash wasn't paying attention. It's got 2 Mangonels going right now. Some Lancers also joined the party. And as things stand, the Battering Ram is gonna be taken down quite easily. Horse Archers now come from behind. The Mangonels get some beautiful hits out there. I also see a conversion attempt by Scyther. That's going to repel all those Knights, and that is a beautiful move from him. He got basically no conversions, but that wasn't the most important thing in that fight. The most important thing was that he repelled that Knight charge. And now you got the Horse Archers coming in from Shinku Purpur as well. Numbers seem to be slightly better for Dinky King's team, especially with all that Mongol infantry on the battlefield. All those steel units are just getting slaughtered by the Red Knights and the Yellow infantry, and then suddenly this turns into a fight where you still see some Red Knights, you see some Yellow units from Veggie, and you see some Blue units from Scyther, and the only units you see from Neptune's team are just a handful of Green Horse Archers. This is looking bad for Neptune's team, not gonna lie, because this push is something that they had to make happen. His French player now has 2 town centers working for him, and he's got the Royal Institute, so soon those knights will have royal bloodlines, and that will give them 310 HP. The Mongol player is quite powerful still with his army, moving all the way down south. How is Neptune doing? Because that's the biggest question. He's going up with the Royal Institute to Castle Age, but his economy isn't looking spectacular. He's currently at 56 villagers. Not something that he has to be very happy with. He managed to get a nice raid going inside the base of Scyther, but it killed a minimal amount of villagers at this point. And still, the biggest question mark for me right now is Shinku Purpur as opposed to Scyther. Because, of course, Relic is not the biggest priority, or gold income is not the biggest priority with the Horse Archer build, but it definitely helps grabbing upgrades like Boyar's Fortitude, and of course, having 600 gold per minute for free is not something that you're gonna be disappointed about. Looks like Shinku Purpur is completely neglecting all the relics. He's just going for the Nitrate House here. Obviously, this is gonna account for 1.5 relics, but still, that's not spectacular by any means. Looks like the forces of Scyther are thinking about starting a push against the base of Neptune once again. Up north, Flash is regrouping. He's got quite a lot of archers on the battlefield and lancers. Not exactly sure why that many archers. Might be to deal with some of the horse archers, but I think a couple of crossbow mixed in would actually do a little bit more good, simply because that would be very effective against those red knights. You won't be able to beat that many horse archers with just a handful of foot archers anyways. Many of those horse archers right now heavily battered for Scyther, as Veggie is crawling up. Their target is likely going to be the Rus player now. Fairly sizable force of horse archers now inside the base for Shinku Purpur, though. It's got 105 HP on those already, as opposed to these horse archers still lacking Boyar's Fortitude. So the army quality is pretty decent right now for green, as we got some red knights already converging in as well. And oh boy, Neptune has to run for his life. I think Dinky King didn't spot those villagers, and Neptune has to be very happy with that, because those knights could have pushed him back even more. 9 villagers being lost over there is not something that he could have accounted for. Here comes the Mangonel push here for the Mongols player. The biggest problem right now for Shinku Purpur will be that he is 1 versus 3 right now. Very sizable force of horse archers coming in, but there is the force of Flash coming in, and one thing that we haven't talked about yet is all those stealth forests. And with those stealth forests out there, it's very, very easy to ambush your opponent, and we could see something like that happening, because I think this is the moment where Dinky King's team is realizing that there is a push coming from behind them. The Mangonels will get some nice volleys out, and that is exactly what you need against that many spearmen. The spearmen are just getting absolutely torn apart by the archers and the Mangonel fire, and from the right side, the horse archers are moving in. The Mangonels on the right side are also doing work for Veggie, so both sides are losing considerable numbers when it comes to their horse archers, but ultimately, it seems like Neptune's team is going to push this one back. All 3 siege weapons on the battlefield are gonna get taken down, and now it is Shinku Purpur and Flash launching counterattack. Behind this one, we have Castle Age finally for Neptune, but he's still far away from recovery. That's the biggest problem right now for their team, because he just needs some time being untouched to recover, but that's going to be hard to find right now. Still, he's up to Castle Age. He has the Royal Institute, so he can get Royal Bloodlines at some point. Speaking of Royal Bloodlines, the Knights of Dinky King are missing that right now. So as things stand, these Knights will trade rather evenly. In the middle, Horse Archers are moving up. I did mention the importance of stealth forests. You shouldn't underestimate the fact that any moment when you're fighting, enemies could pop out of that forest, and Scyther is still missing the Boyar's Fortitude upgrade, which starts to haunt him quite badly. Not only is he being outnumbered right now with Horse Archers, the quality is also much worse. Having 20 less HP is definitely something that swings this battle in the favor of Shinku Purpur at this point. Knights are now moving in though from Dinky King to try and push Flash's base. Flash is going to have to retreat at this point, as a siege weapon is going to get intercepted in the middle. Looks like the Horse Archers will converge on all of those Knights, and now the target is likely going to be Dinky King. Meanwhile, Horse Archers are regrouping for Scyther. He's healing all of those back up. And as things stand, I think the best thing that you can do if you're Shinku Purpur is dive in with the Horse Archers into the base of Dinky King. Your own French player has been heavily damaged. The best thing that you can possibly do, I think, is move in with your Horse Archers and kill 20-30 villagers from Dinky King. So basically your opponent's French player would also be heavily damaged. Horse Archers now moving up for Shinku Purpur. There is 2 town centers out there for Dinky King and quite a lot of towers, so it's going to be difficult to pick off a ton of villagers, but you could still get some damage done. There's a castle here, by the way, for Dinky King, and that's empowering all those stables, so it's a little easier for him to afford all those knights. He still doesn't have the HP upgrade on them, though, so that's going to make it a little easier for those horse archers to do damage. And indeed, the target is going to be Dinky King. All those lancers, archers are crawling up as well, but as I said, you have quite a lot of towers over here, so without a ton of siege, you won't be able to do that many damage to Dinky King's economy. You're going to be able to pick off a couple of villagers, but I think you have to try and find these isolated fragments on the sides, get some raids going around these areas. These Lancers have been doing work inside the base of Flash, by the way. A couple of kills were made by them. Down south, though, slowly but surely Neptune is recovering, and that's exactly what Shinku Purpur and Flash want to do. Stall this game out until their own French player is able to come back into this game. 3 Mangonels are crawling up as well. We have the Horse Archers from Scyther moving up. Mangonels not being set up until now, and their first volley is targeting the Knights, not the Horse Archers. Now the Horse Archers can close the distance, and 2 of those Mangonels will go down before getting a single shot out, although one of them is able to get a nice hit on top of those Horse Archers. As things stand, many of those Horse Archers are heavily damaged, and with only 85 HP still on those Horse Archers, this is a good fight for Shinku Purpur and his team, although now the Knights are charging in, and those Knights, now having 300 HP, suddenly absorb a lot of arrow fire, and it looks like Shinku Purpur's team, lacking the Knight component, is going to be forced to retreat. If there were some Knights over here for them to soak up arrow fire, they would have won this fight. The biggest problem for them was that, while their Horse Archers are definitely better, they were just outnumbered there, and once the Knights hit the field, the Foot Archers from Mongols won't do much. Now the good news for Neptune's team is that while the Knights and of course the Horse Archers were all the way up there, we have some Knights coming in from Neptune starting to kill the eco of Scyther. So that's something to be mindful of. Despite the fact that Scyther has 6 relics working for him, he still has to have some villagers on food and wood, because that's what he's utilizing directly to make Horse Archers. And down south, you already see some Knights coming in as well to try and raid Veggie. Veggie's got dozens of Spearmen out there, so he's gonna be able to hold this one for the time being. Also fortifying this gold mine with no less than 4 towers. On the right side, we have some Red Knights coming in as well, trying to raid Neptune, though. Neptune currently has the HP upgrade as well, and he's grabbing the enlistment incentives. So he's going to do the same thing as his opponent, make a castle, and then just have the Knights being produced on the stables nearby for the discount. Up north, Horse Archers once again moving in from Shinku Purpur. As things stand, there are quite a lot of exposed villagers from Red to find. Those are probably the primary targets at this point. Meanwhile, for Veggie's team, they're able to clean up all the Knights inside the base of Veggie, and at some point, Veggie is going to recover as well. He has been badly beat up in terms of army the last time we saw him, but he's slowly rebuilding his army, so we'll have to keep an eye out on him as well, because he will soon become a factor. Got quite a lot of Lancers now from Flash, so he's got the mobility. There's a 3rd town center for Dinky King to protect the northern side of his base, but we could see those Knights doing some damage. And speaking of Knights, holy potatoes, that's a scary force of Knights here for Dinky King. Those guys have 300 HP each, so they're much better than the Lancers of Flash. There is no way Flash can take this fight. In fact, that scary force of Knights could be devastating. Nice raid here from Shinku Purpur. He's diving into the base of Scyther, but now Scyther has the upgrade as well, so at this point Scyther is likely going to trade rather evenly, although numbers seem to favor Shinku Purpur quite a bit. I think Green has to commit to this one. He's going to trade army, but he's also going to take down quite a lot of villagers from his opponent. He already has the villager lead, so if he can get some more kills here, he could easily compensate for that relic deficit that he's having right now. But the reinforcements are just flooding in here for Scyther, and I feel like maybe now is the time to retreat, and indeed that's exactly what Green is thinking. He was hoping that there is no more reinforcements coming in, but boy oh boy was he wrong. The reinforcements are just flooding in, and now you have 2 town centers as well for Scyther, so he should be able to catch up in terms of economy. And of course, once again, on the north, we do have a huge force of Knights here. I think they want to get a good surround on those green Knights out here. Scyther pulling his villagers from his farming eco out here. He wants to make sure those don't get picked off by the Horse Archers. But soon those green Horse Archers might get trapped in this corner, you see. There are multiple towers being built by Dinky King, and the most important thing is that 2 forces are pursuing this one. The blue horse archers by themselves should be able to clean this up, but with a good charge from all those red knights, there's no chance for Shinku Purpur to keep this army alive. Saint's Blessing also played a factor for Scyther over there, and ultimately, all those horse archers do get cleaned up. Now, this being said, quite a lot of damage was done to Shinku Purpur, so let's take a look at the economies. Scyther having less food income than his green counterpart, slightly better food income, still better gold income though, as opposed to his opponent. Flash having 2,000 food income per minute, not something to be ashamed of, as he's pushing up with quite a lot of Lancers. The problem with the Lancers here is that his Lancers are no match for the French heavy cavalry, so the only way the Lancer play works out is if Neptune is also able to contribute with a lot of knights. Now, looking at Neptune, he's got 18 army only, so it's not like he's able to do much, especially because the Mongol player he's fighting is just going for full spearmen. This is not a fight that Neptune wants to take here, and this is not a fight that he should take. Look at that! The spearmen are even surrounding all those knights, and he's throwing away way too many knights. These knights should be kept in like one big ball, and then clash into the ones of red, because if you don't do that, red's gonna have like what is already like 40 plus heavy cavalry units with 300 HP in Castle Age, and those will just smack all the Lancers of Flash in the face. Now, Flash is also making Spearmen, so Spearmen and Lancers should still be able to beat this army, but you gotta be careful with this Lancers now charging in from Flash, getting a couple of kills, as Imperial Age is on the way for Dinky King. He's going up at the Red Palace. Very powerful defensive structure, should give him a lot of safety up north. Quite a few villagers will bite the dust here before that building goes up, but it's gonna be Imperial Age, and that's going to give him the chance to go for Elite Knights. Speaking of Knights, he's already pursuing all the horse archers of Shinku Purpur, and this is where you're really missing that meat shield of purple knights that could have been here. For Neptune, he is still in Castle Age, and I don't think that he's going up just yet. Dinky King reaching Imperial Age as the first player right now, and he's probably gonna go for Elite Knight immediately. He can't get the Royal Bloodlines upgrade again, because he's already gotten that from the Royal Institute, so it's only Elite Knight to go for, and of course the Blacksmith upgrades. Right now Knights are coming in as well to push Shinku Purpur into a difficult position, and speaking of difficult position, that's a beautiful raid by Dinky King. Might even be able to take down the Steppe Redoubt, which would be a very nice value there. It's a key element of the gold income for Flash, but instead they're just going to double team Shinku Purpur. They're realizing that this force is just gigantic. The forces of Flash are also converging up on this location. I don't see a single yellow unit from Veggie or a purple from Neptune, so they're pretty much playing a 1v1 over here. And speaking of that 1v1, down south, you do have a push being assembled by Veggie with Spearmen and Lancers. Looks like this is gonna be the big fight to be had though. Quite a lot of heavy cavalry coming in from Dinky King. They just got the Elite Knight upgrade, so those Juggernauts have 364 HP. That's exactly the timing that you want to hit. You want to hit that timing with the upgrade so that you can start killing the enemy units just when the battle begins. Spearmen are now catching up for Flash, so they will help out against those Knights, but the Knights are doing an exceptional job cleaning up all those green horse archers. And you see, at this point, the blue horse archers, they are just trying to pull away the forces of Flash over here, and with so many elite Royal Knights for Dinky King, he can do a ton of damage. He's idling a lot of food eco, and he's now pulling all those knights to the back of Shinku Purpur's base. That many spearmen should be able to clean them up, but I love the move from Dinky King to split them up. Just send a couple of knights in here, because even 5 royal knights can just kill 10-15 villagers here, and that's exactly what you want to do. Shinku Purpur already lost his army, so if he loses some eco here, it's going to be very difficult for him to recover. And those Royal Knights are killing villagers extremely fast. So you see, it's like 2 or 3 hits at maximum. I think it's only 2, especially because those villagers don't have textiles. But with that, so many villagers are going down from Shinku Purpur. Flash still has a sizable force of horse archers. Neptune's knight numbers are growing as well. But you already see a Traction Trebuchet coming in here from Veggie, shelling that castle in the middle. And he's got a fairly sizable force of spearmen as well that were just bracing against all those Lancers. Now you feel like the momentum is on the side of Dinky King's team, and this is match point. If they win this, they are in the top 8. They have been killing villagers from Shinku Purpur for a long time. In fact, Green is down to 80 population. He's floating tons of resources, and now, oh my goodness, an absolute slaughter by Dinky King's knights over here. Just look at that. It's like 10-15 villagers killed, so many more are about to go down, and the spearmen are here, but as I said, knights are killing villagers so fast and with the French discount, they're relatively cheap as well. You can just send in wave after wave of knights, kill 20-30 villagers, and then of course you're gonna have your knights cleaned up, but your opponent's eco is gonna be put into a very, very difficult position. Flash is at 66 villagers only. His army is still sizable, but he's got basically no food economy, so replenishing armies is gonna be extremely difficult for them. And now down south you see Trebuchets setting up for Veggie. He's shelling that castle, and if the castle goes down, the discount on those stables also goes away. Neptune is pulling villagers to repair that, but I think you could even think about sending in the spearmen, trying to fight them. There is no boiling oil on that keep, so you could do that. And horsemen are coming out for Neptune. That's a bad sign for him. Horsemen is a sign that he's running out of gold, and against the French player Dinky King, that still has a ton of gold income. He's got 33 on gold right now as we speak, with 1500 gold per minute. He can spam cavalry forever, and that's exactly what he's doing. You see batches of 8 to 10 knights are just roaming the map, looking for villagers to kill, and whenever they find a target, they are going to come away with like 10-15 villager kills. And on the south, we're just gonna have a massive push coming in. A final cavalry charge here from Neptune, but I feel like this is more like a desperation move. Those horse archers from Scyther are just tearing apart all that light cavalry. There were some knights as well mixed in, but the numbers were just insufficient, and ultimately Scyther comes away with a massive win. Horsemen now trying to charge in on the Mangonels, but oh my goodness, that's gonna be a slaughter as well with all the spearmen around. Mangonels even getting a volley out, and so many horsemen coming away heavily damaged. The castle is still standing, so Veggie is going to retarget his traps to take down the production buildings nearby. But now just look at this. Even with 4 town centers operational for Shinku Purpur, it's going to take a lot of time to rebuild his entire eco. He's aging up to Imperial with the Spasskaya Tower, but I wonder how much eco he's gonna have left when he gets up to Imperial. He's at 70 villagers. 4 theses. He's building the landmark with 53 villagers. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, 53 villagers. He really wanted to get up to Imperial. And once he gets up, he's gonna have mounted precision, the elite horse archer upgrade, and of course the blacksmith upgrades. But once again, his eco looks like an absolute train wreck right now. And as things stand, even with 4 town centers, it's going to take a lot of time to reboom. And that's where lacking those relics hurts really badly, because the relics would give you a passive resource income. It's not something that is easily raidable. And in comparison, Scyther has 6 relics that are just impossible to raid. The only way that you can take those away from the opponent is by destroying the monastery, but that's gonna take quite a lot of time. Whereas if you look at Shinku Purpur, he's getting all of his villagers absolutely massacred near that Spasskaya Tower. Just look at those dead bodies littering the battlefield. He's down to 27 population. And Dinky King is showing no signs of slowing down. He's at 54 army, and you just never see the end of that cavalry push. Whenever we look at any part of the map, you see some red knights all around. He's just flooding red cavalry, and now you see he's sending in all the units into the base of Neptune as well. Neptune is about to get defeated because he doesn't have any forces to stop this. And as things stand, on open maps, Dinky King's team is performing a lot better. They did that in game number 1, and now they're doing that in game number 3 as well. That is 4 trebuchets, 5 mangonels coming up. We also have some horse archers coming in, and I love how they are just committed to that castle age push. Dinky King is the only imp player. Scyther isn't planning to go up into Imperial anytime soon, neither does Veggie, and with all that landmarks going down, you already have Neptune knocked out of the game. It feels next to impossible for Shinku Purpur and Flash to stop Dinky King, Veggie, and Scyther at this point. 2 versus 3, with the green player having less than 60 population. I don't think this is gonna happen. I'm trying to be positive all the time with the players, but this feels next to impossible, especially with that next wave of heavy cavalry now targeting Flash. They know exactly that green is pretty much dead at this point. He's got elite horse archers, but his numbers are just minimal at this point. And just look at this army converging up north. 60 plus spearmen, 75 horse archers, mangonels, trebuchets, and we haven't even talked about what is at this point around 60 fully upgraded French heavy cavalry. I'm curious how they perform in this fight. I would love to see them fighting this, simply because I'm curious how these Castle Age spearmen do against all those French Royal Knights. I would expect that both armies would just get destroyed, but the spearmen wouldn't have an easy time against those knights. It doesn't really matter, because at this point we're just waiting for these armies to move up, and they're going for green. I think it would be probably better in the long run to destroy Teal, because he's still the stronger player out of the two. But probably the simplest thing to do right now for Veggie's team is just to knock out green as well and just make it a 3 versus 1. I really feel like there is very few things that they could do to lose this game now, because they have ultimate map control. You see, now you have Imperial Age for Scyther and Dinky King as well, whereas on the other side, there's only one Imperial Age player, that is Shinku Purper. He's got a sizable force of horse archers, but it's only 36, and you got 5 Mangonels out here. The Mangonels are setting up, and you don't want to be close to them when they get those rocks out. The first volley hits the horse archers nicely, and that is just way too much firepower to handle. Horse archers now with elite upgrades as well for Scythers, so he now is going to commit against this one. The trebuchets are getting the shots out on the keep, and just look at that swarm of spearmen. Mangonels are also pushing up all the way, and the Mangonels getting a nice volley out. That is just half of all the horse archers from green going down. He can't get close because the Mangonels will just tear him apart, and you see the spearmen are now moving in and they're just targeting the town centers. At this point, I don't think Shinku Purper can hold this off. It's a matter of seconds until his base gets destroyed, and behind this one, all those red knights from Dinky King are just basically smacking Flash's spearman in the face. Flash is barely alive against those knights, and he's holding on with the best unit he can make against them. And on the other side, of course, the spearmen are taking down the starting town center. Looking at the landmarks to destroy, there is the high trade house over here on the right side, and on the far right you have the Spaskaya tower. But at this point, you see that Scyther is even leaving. He's like, okay, you can have it. You can just have the spearmen overrun everything, because there is just no army here for Shinku Purper anyways. And might as well send all the horse archers to the north, because Flash is only holding on with a handful of spearmen. The only reason why Neptune's team really tried and play on here is because this was game number 3. They knew exactly that if they resign, it is game over for them. And with that, get on the deers. Scyther, Veggie, and Dinky King move into the top 8. A very good performance from both teams throughout this set. They were quite close in skill. In this last game, the biggest question mark to me was going for the high trade house and not even contesting the relics for Shinku Purper. Even if he goes for a monastery and picks up 1 or 2 relics, that could have already been something. The other thing to talk about was, of course, the fact that the French player from Double Agent Pangolin always got pushed pretty heavily, so that was the biggest problem of theirs. Their French player always got double, triple teamed, and he was set back so much that he never really was able to help out. This applied to both game number 1 and 3, and part of the reason why they lost these games is because they were basically fighting a 2.5 versus 3 or a 2 versus 3 for the majority of the game. With that being said, get on the deers. Veggie, Dinky King, and Scyther will move on into the top 8. Double Agent Pangolin, Neptune, Flash, and Shinku Purper are out, but they have shown that they are pretty good at these team game things, so looking forward to seeing them play more team games in the future.